Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash, as well as the latest episode of Legion. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of The Flash, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Legion. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of The Flash. A great episode. We actually kind of finally know what the whole enlightenment thing is about, because this isn't just something that he came up with like, oh, why he became the thinker. It's like, no, Clifford's had this in his mind since the very beginning. See, for Clifford, he's always been against technology because he feels like technology, he's one of the smart people. I mean, that's kind of what everyone's like always afraid of, like the advancement of technology will eventually come back and screw us over. Well, he's kind of thinking of it in a similar sense, but kind of also in a different sense, because we've become so reliant on technology, but we also forget about what happens because of our advancements in technology. Because of our advancements in technology, new weapons and new things of destruction and death are created. He was talking about the person who made the Nobel Peace Prize was to compensate for the fact is that same dude is the one who made dynamite. So it's like, because Marlies back then, because it was kind of like a back and forth they had, because Marlies is kind of like, he's very pessimistic when it comes to people, because he thinks with technology, people like that more darker nature of people, like it's advanced, like humans given enough time, like the fact is we live longer and everything just gives us more time to create these more technological advances, and that just will ultimately doom us all, and essentially the destruction that we cause because of technology. So his whole thing is about wiping out technology. It seems like initially, Marlies was kind of scared of it, but it seems like because she was scared initially because it made sense to her, but she ran away from it because it collided with everything that she ever believed herself. But being where she was, she made a filtration system for water in Kenya, and these people attacked just to steal that little bit of technology. That technology is what drives kind of the evil in people. Not all of it, but it can be a contributing factor in it, and that's what DeVoe's whole thing is about. He wants to basically take the pieces that he acquired in this episode, where he's basically making satellites so that he can send out dark matter everywhere and revert everyone's brain into basically the same situation that Harry's in, that basically he's losing his intelligence, take everyone back. And then from there forth, it's like wipe out technology and then we grow together. I will lead you in this enlightenment, kind of leading behind. It's almost kind of got like this Buddhist like mentality about it, of like finding enlightenment, which I guess makes sense in the long run. It's kind of, hence enlightenment, but leaving behind material things and technology, which is just kind of interesting. Like that's your main motivation behind all of this. But basically take the world's advancement back in time. And just because I guess he will be the one that kind of lead the world, essentially, like there will be no more problems because we'll cast aside technology and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting because I'm curious to see, like, I mean, obviously his new body allows him to do what he needs to do, which is kind of interesting because it's all about you keeping your brain while everyone else gets dumber. It's just kind of interesting to me. Plus, you've got all these powers and stuff like that. I mean, I'm curious, like, what does he plan to do in this world when he creates like that? Like, I guess if people aren't smart enough to, because I guess he'll go back and wipe out all the technology while he's making everyone dumber, so there'll be no means for people to fight back. But what about the people, who have powers like Barry? I guess like the whole point is like they'll be so stupid they can't fight back. They won't know what to do. I don't know. I mean, I guess no matter who steps to him, because everyone will. Because it also is something Marlies kind of tackles on too. It's like you're not doing this out of like trying to enlighten people. You're just trying to rule people. Because in a situation, he will be the smartest person around, and no one would be able to challenge him. So it's not just about him being enlightenment. It's almost like he's trying to rise above as a god. Because it's like, oh, let me create this world. And seems like that's kind of what he's going for. So it's kind of interesting finally getting. Like, it's one of those things where the road to hell is paved with good intentions, where it's like, you understand where he was coming from, but it is a very extremist point of view to wipe out all technology, because there has been good aspects of technology. For him, it's like, well, even with all the good, there's always the bad with it. So, I mean, that's kind of anything in life. That's kind of like the balance of life. But for him, he feels like life has become off balance because people have become too reliant, not being good enough to handle things without technology, that we become so self-reliant on it. It's like we can find a different path forward without it. But like, I'm still curious, like, what that world looks like necessarily for him. Like I said, it's just kind of interesting, considering the fact is, you use technology, a thing that you hate so much and think is the death of mankind. You use it so much to get to where you are. I just think it's a little hypocritical, if you ask me. And once again, you being the smartest one out there, hypocritical as well. I also appreciated that this whole situation was figured out because of Cecile, because basically the way Henry's mind works, I think I've been saying Henry, but Harry's mind works is the fact is, the more he uses his brain, the more he kind of tries to use his intellect, the quicker it fades away. But Cecile can read his mind, so she's able to transcribe stuff. So that's how they were able to kind of figure this all out. So I thought that's kind of pretty neat. It's also sad that Harry kind of had to admit to the team, because he's like, Barry's like, okay, we'll devote time to this, like helping you. It's like, no, he doesn't want that. Because for Harry, it's like, I don't know who I'm going to be without it, which, even Cecile's like, you'll still be you. There's different ways to be intellectual, which for Harry, like even Harry tackles it again. It's like, for him, his intellect has always been his thing. Beyond that, like I said, he's always felt like that's what he brought to the team. And if he doesn't have that, like, what does he do? What can he bring to the team? What can he offer to anybody? Doesn't mean he can't go back to learning everything again, but it is just kind of interesting that things kind of worked out the way they are. I guess it's just kind of like foreshadowing, like Harry's situation was foreshadowing what DeVoe had planned. It's just kind of interesting to me that it kind of worked out like that, because Harry's kind of like, in a sense, the first person to suffer ramifications for it. To be fair, Harry's process is going over slowly. It's happening quickly, but at the same time, it's happening very slowly. So I'm curious, is DeVoe's situation going to be happening very slowly, or is it because he has the satellites and the dark matter, will it he hasten it? Because he also has to like make it hit the entire world. That's like billions of people, so who knows? The thing I was quite surprised about is the fact is that Marliese betrayed him. I kind of figured it was going to come, but it seems like she more so like she might be going on her own, because I love her like taking the thinker chair and being like, without me, Clifford, you are nothing. And it's like, ugh, so smart, but he didn't see that betrayal coming, because once again, you don't know the complications of the heart. You can't predict human behavior, because you're not as smart as you think you are, because you would have seen that coming. Also, because she's not on the tiers anymore, so she's kind of making her own choices now, because for her it's like she's kind of another enemy. It doesn't seem like necessarily she might be an ally to Team Flash, which is what I kind of thought she might be. Seems like she's probably just another enemy. She's just kind of middle ground antagonist right now, but she's definitely not going along with what Clifford wants to do. So, because he's even talking about the fact that she will be affected by this too, that the enlightenment will reach her too. And he's like, when it's all said and done, I will be the only one standing. So we'll see. That's just very interesting. I'm curious to see what happens to him going forward without Marliese, because Marliese was like the only ties to his humanity, but she's kind of done doing that, because it's like, you're not my husband anymore, because he was close to killing Gypsy. He killed that guard. We did see in the past, like, her right arm got hurt during that whole Kenya situation, and her right arm got hurt too during the fight. So I'm wondering, well, not her right arm, her left arm, sorry. So it makes me wonder, did that kind of kick in at some point then and there too? Like, maybe that kind of memory because for him, emotions have kind of been cast aside. He's all logical now, so it's just kind of interesting. I'm surprised he listened to her at all and didn't just kill Gypsy. That would have sucked. Which, since I am talking about it, this was a big episode for Cisco and Gypsy, because of the whole situation of like, well, what do you want to do, Cisco? And you even have Barry trying to play matchmaker. I even love Gypsy being like, don't swoosh me again. Be fair, she handled it pretty well. Has he done that to her before? Because she, like, most people can't handle it. I guess it's because she's a metahuman and she does the whole breaching thing, so she doesn't have to worry about it as much. Because there's always Diggle. Diggle's kind of like, nah, I'm good. So that's always a thing with Diggle. I think it's a thing with everybody, but I think given enough time, people can figure it out. Also, really quickly, I loved it. It's like, Cisco's like, okay, let's see and then slows down. Everything, like, Barry dashes around, figures things out, and it's like, oh, Alloy 1717. And Cisco's like, okay, I'll stand here and look pretty, dude. It's like, oh, that's so good. Because it's like, oh, what's the point of me literally being here trying to do anything? Like, oh, let me search. Like, oh, literally it's been a second. You've already figured it. Okay, you do you, Barry. I like that. But, like, Iris kind of had to tell Barry to kind of slow down. It's their relationship. Like, it's good that you want to help and everything, because, like, Cisco's like family. So when they hurt, we hurt. But at the same time, it is a situation of you can't interfere with their their lives. Like, as a friend, all we can do is be there to support them when it's all said and done. But for Barry, it's because they are literally hanging on by a thread. Anything could break them up, and he doesn't want that. It's like he's kind of carrying the weight of being the one to keep the team together, and that was kind of what was pushing him, because obviously, he didn't want Cisco to go, because it's like, well, we kind of need you here. But, but it turns out neither one of them wanted Cisco to take the job, between Cisco or between him and Gypsy or Cynthia. I never really referred to her as Cynthia. I think it's just because it's weird, because if you don't know, my mom's name is Cynthia. I don't know if they've ever talked about it before. I don't know. So it just, I don't know. Besides, I kind of like Gypsy better. But it's just kind of funny, because I don't ever refer to Cisco as Vibe, It's just, even when he's Vibe, I just always refer to him as Cisco. It's always interesting, like, how things kind of work like that. But nevertheless, she didn't want things to change, is kind of where she started. I was like, oh my God, neither one of you want to take this. I was like, oh man, yeah, good. You're on good terms again. Because I do like that the fact of the matter is, for their powers to kind of work together, they had to kind of be on the same mindset and wavelength. Which their powers, for a moment, they were earlier in the episode, but obviously you can tell there was like some problems in Paradise when they did it again, and this time they got blown back like before. So it can work, but the person would have to be on the same wavelength, and where they are now, when this all said and done, that'll probably never happen again. So Cisco probably can't do anything about it. Not unless Cisco probably if Cisco probably pushed himself further, he probably could, but that'd probably be a lot more damaging to him. Maybe even the backlash would be worse because he used so much more power. I don't know. But it turns out Cisco didn't want to take the job either. But for him, it's like, I don't want things to stay the same. He wants things to be different. Because for her, it's like, she loves her job. And Cisco knows how important it is to her, but he doesn't want the whole like long distance relationship. Oh, yeah, I spend time with you, you spend time with me. We decide which Earth, who gets to spend time with who when, and then some emergency kind of pulling us away from each other. It's like, no, I don't want to have to worry about when I'm gonna see you again. I want to see you, the woman I love. I want to wake up and be able to see her. But it's like he wants more, because for her, it's kind of, and it literally pops in the back of my mind, it's kind of similar to the Alex and Maggie thing. They just want two different things. Whereas, Gypsy was okay with things being as the way they are, but Cisco wanted more. He wanted more like relationship where it's like, we can literally be on the same Earth, but he can't go to Earth 19 because like so much of his friends and his family needs him here. Like, this is where he belongs. Just like Gypsy, her job is important to her. Like, this life is important to him. So it's sadly that it seems like they have to break up, Like I said, it's very similar to the whole Alex and Maggie situation. You just want two different things. And so they have to say goodbye, which is such a shame, because I thought they were it's such a shame because they're so cute together. Because also, like I said, this is like the first relationship Cisco's been in the entire show, too. I mean, there's the whole him and, once again, Snart's sister. There was that little bit of a thing there, but that's about it. Nothing ever really came about because of that. But another thing came about because of this episode too, and we've kind of gotten to see a more reckless side of Caitlyn, because Caitlyn put herself intentionally in danger just so she could get the adrenaline in her running to make sure that they could activate Killer Frost. But Iris is like, yeah, don't do that again. Like, we'll find a way. And Caitlyn's like, no, I will. So it's kind of like, I think that's something we could see going forward, her doing more and more dangerous things, because it seems like it's a combination of she lost like her other half, like a part of herself, kind of like she'd do anything to get that part of her back, which is just kind of interesting. Like I said, it's just interesting because all she wanted last season was to get rid of Killer Frost. And it's like, well, look where we are now. Probably even in the beginning of the season might have wanted that. Like I said, because it's just kind of interesting, especially because how season 3 ended. I wonder, was that like, did they always want to go in this direction with Killer Frost? But the way they ended season 3 with her kind of being like, I'm not Caitlyn or Killer Frost, like I'm kind of somewhere in between, something new. Like, did they kind of pull back from that because they wanted to take it in this direction, or was this the direction they always planning on taking? I'm just curious. Maybe they kind of left it open-ended like that because they weren't 100% sure what they were going to do with Caitlyn this season. So I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting thing to think about. And I think that's going to be something they're going to have to be watching out for going forward, Team Flash as a whole. And, more so at it, like, the team falling apart more and more. Lost Ralph, Cisco being kind of in an emotional situation that he's in. Harry's losing, his intelligent, Caitlyn kind of being almost borderlining self-destructive at this moment. It's like Team Flash, as time is going, man, Team Flash is falling apart hard on different levels. It's just kind of interesting considering where Team Arrow stands right now. So it's just kind of interesting. Like I said, it's fascinating. I feel like amongst any shows, these shows kind of reflect each other the most, and just a lot of their themes and just what's going on in certain regards. It's like, oh yeah, like a lot of it's, I don't know, kind of flip sides to each other, yet on some occasions kind of like coinciding, you know? It's just kind of interesting to think about. But what we saw at the ending is very, very interesting, that the mysterious girl shows up again and she drops off a gift to Cecile and Joe, talking about how like, oh, their love is such a good thing. It's like, oh, look at you. You look like you're about to give birth in like probably exactly 21 days. It's like, of course you probably know the exact time and everything. But the fact of the matter is, she's kind of like, you make us realize how precious time is and how little of we have. I mean, she's like, I mean, literally how little of it. I mean, so it's like, okay, so you know stuff is coming down the pipeline. So, and now in retrospect, I guess that's also why she wanted to meet with, Cisco and Ralph at that point in time. Like I said, because it seems like systematically she's going through the entire team, because she met Harry and, Caitlyn before, so it's like it seems like she's trying to get to know certain members of the teams before things go down. Like obviously she met Ralph like way before things kind of got to where they are now, but maybe that's why she picked that time. Maybe she met with Caitlyn and Harry then because she knew about what their future held for them, where Harry is going to be and where Caitlyn's going to be, or where Caitlyn will be, not just currently where she is, but where she will be soon enough, like with this whole Killer Frost situation. I don't know, something to think about. But what I really appreciated, thought was kind of nice, is the moment Iris she saw Iris, she ran. And they're like, oh, because she also made sure not to let Barry see her face either, because that probably would have brought up a lot of questions. But what I thought was really nice is she was waiting around the corner and then she dashes away. So she's a speedster. But notice what color lightning she had was purple. Now, interestingly enough, and I just couldn't help but notice this, but on Earth 19 when they were showing up, because they went out of their way to show that like whole view, I'm sure if you went back, you can probably catch more details. But there was someone with purple lightning, speedster, like running away. So I was like, is that what that's supposed to be? Because we do know that Jay is training someone. It makes you wonder, does Jay, like, that could be her thing too. She might not actually always be on Earth 1. She might actually travel to different Earths for different reasons, for whatever. So she could pretend like she's from Earth 3, but actually be training, like popping in on Earth 1, but because we do know that Jay was like, oh yeah, I'm training this young speedster. Like I assumed it was her, but I was like, why would that? No, like it seems like she would probably have to be from Earth 1. I mean, I've been thinking that, but it's like, well, who's to say she's not from because she knows their futures exactly. So it can't be like she's from a different Earth or anything, but like maybe because getting Barry to train her or whatever, because he's the only speedster that's really around that could train her, would involve her kind of interfering, you know, because she knows about the future and that probably complicate things. So maybe it's easier to actually get Jay to train her. Like I said, I have an idea of who she is. Once again, I haven't looked into it too deeply. It was just a spoiler I randomly came across. To be fair, I know who she's potentially supposed to be, is kind of what the spoiler kind of made it hint to, that's who she's supposed to be. But who's to say the show might do something a little different with her? All I can say is, it's just, isn't it quite interesting that, oh yeah, when Iris had her speedster ability, she had like purple lightning, and it's like, oh, when we saw her dash away, she had purple lightning. Like I said, there was also that other speedster that had purple lightning. I want to say that was them, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's just kind of an Earth 19 speedster. I mean, they're kind of all over the place, so maybe that was just kind of a reference to another speedster that we'll see later on. Maybe just kind of like a speedster we'll never see at all, but just being like, oh yeah, they exist in this multiverse. I don't know. It's just something kind of interesting to think about. So I'm very excited to see what the next episode has in store for us, where all this is going to take us. And now moving on to this week's episode of Legion. A great episode. I really love the intro to the episode, because it was like not previously on Legion. It was like apparently on Legion. And I do appreciate them putting things into context they were, because there was like stuff in the premiere I didn't understand. Like now going back, like them reminding me like, oh, I got something wrong. Was in the premiere when we saw Oliver and Lenny kind of in that pool, kind of out sunbathing, and it zoomed out. And obviously it's like, we now know that was like Farouk. It was zooming out. But it's like, oh, that's supposed to be like him just kind of having them stashed away. It's like, oh, they're relaxing because they're kind of stuck in their little box until he decides to pull them out. So Obviously, this episode focuses on Lenny, everyone interviewing her, in particular, two people, Clark and Potomac. It's kind of interesting. What was kind of caught me off guard was like Clark's test, because like, oh, here's a blank card. Maybe if she was really the Shadow King, maybe it's kind of like psychic paper or something. And then he showed her the picture of him showing her the picture. It was a picture within a picture, which I don't know what that's supposed to represent, but we did get a little more background into Lenny, and I liked her whole thing because it's like, we kind of learned a little bit more about her grandmom, her mom being divorced and everything, that basically her mom couldn't have the whole bunch of kids that she wanted because when Lenny came out, her uterus came out too. Lenny's words exactly. But what's interesting is her being like, I'm not the villain. She's like, yeah, I might have done the whole like evil Lenny thing, but that wasn't me. I was just kind of being, I was a puppet on strings. That she's like, I'm not a villain. It's like, you've been arrested 13 times. It's like, okay, yes, I've done some bad stuff here and there to try and get drugs and whatnot. Like, that doesn't make me like a bad guy like Farouk is. She's like, I'm just here to help. Then there's that whole situation with Potomac, which I really appreciated, was his perspective of being like, there is no present. Because like, what does it mean for there to be a present? Because nothing ever, because the way light travels and things, that like, you perceive images as the light hits you, but that takes a good amount of time. And so that the time it takes for the image to hit your eyes, that light to hit your eyes, like a good amount, like at least like even milliseconds have passed. So technically there is no present, because every step forward is you go into the future and there's always back. Like there's no like solitary moment of being in the present, which is such an interesting perspective. And I was like, oh, that's so good. That's so neat. But what I also thought was kind of interesting is the fact is that like he tried to get inside of Lenny's head, but his ears started bleeding. It's because that little goo monster thing, which like has been kind of labeled as a delusion, I don't know if that's what they really are, got inside of his head and he started choking her. So was that like, is that thing interfering with Potomac's powers, or like is that just kind of momentarily kind of making him go crazy? Like it was kind of a little thing that we never really dove into trying to understand. Like I don't, like a lot of this episode is kind of like, okay, what's that supposed to mean? What's that supposed to represent? Like what is that supposed to represent? That Potomac isn't 100% control of himself, that Farouk might have sent a little bit of his own like self out there and kind of implanted itself inside of Potomac, or what? Because even in his mind, he's seeing all those ladies with the mustaches, and he sees Fukuyama, but then it's kind of like, it's that thing on the inside of him instead of him himself, and it's like, okay, so is that supposed to mean like that thing is like controlling him to a certain extent if he uses his powers? I don't know. And then came the whole final segment with David finally talking to Lenny. I thought was kind of pretty neat. And she's like, oh, like finally. I like that little bit. You almost see like Lenny kind of come out a little bit, because it's like, hey, like, hey, remember us back at Clockwork? We're kind of like a thing. It's like, yeah, David and Lenny, and them just kind of talking, because obviously David kind of thinks like, okay, you're here working for Farouk, aren't you? It's like, well, I'm not working for him. Obviously he sent me here, but it's like she still wants to help in whatever way she can. So, because for her, it's like she doesn't know what's going on. Because it's something I noticed at first too, because like her eyes didn't look like that. It's like, no, it's like, because I kept noticing, I was like, why are her eyes seem so weird? It's like, those aren't her eyes. It's like, where did you get the body? I'm like, he put her in a different body. It's like, what body could it be? Like, I kind of already had a feeling about it being Amy. The moment David kind of looked in her memory and he saw a little flash of him and Amy as kids, I was like, is that supposed to represent him? Like he took Amy's body, and it seems like that is the case. Because basically when he came to Division 3, he took a device, and basically he had that whole segment where poor Oliver was digging up the body and everything. And he had previously had that whole conversation with Farouk about like, yeah, like, okay, we're going to be digging up a body and everything. It's just like, I don't have the, because it's like, I just got this new suit and everything. The jacket's pretty awesome. It's like, oh, there's going to be bugs and dirt. And it's just like, Oliver's just like, oh, geez. And he's pulling it up, and then Farouk's just like, okay, this is taking too long, and uses his powers. And you almost have Oliver looking like, you SOB, why didn't you use it sooner? It's like, I hate you so much. But because I could tell it wasn't Farouk's body, because if you looked at the arm, you could almost tell like it was a lady's arm, just by like how I guess slender would be the word. You could just tell it looked like it was a lady's arm, and I was like, okay, so what's that? I was like, oh, is this some long lost like love mummy type of thing? Of like, oh, that's an ex love or something of his. I was like, what's up with that? Now in retrospect, it's like that's Lenny's body, because it's like, what did they ever do with Lenny's body? It's like they buried it. So and he took a little bit of her skin, and he ended up following what I guess is kind of like a well, I guess that's Ben's job, because I think he was the one that was driving the little submarine. I guess that's what they were looking for. I guess like while they were there, well, because I was wondering, is like, how could you find them exactly like that? So I guess it's like while they were at Division 3, they kind of tapped into some stuff to find out how exactly to track down Ben and Amy, I guess. I don't know. Not unless they've all, because I feel like why go such a roundabout way to track down Amy? So she must have been hidden pretty well so that he couldn't track her down using his own abilities. She must have like had some kind of psychic block on her, but tracked Ben down and just followed him back home. Obviously there were division guards out there, but I mean, it's Farouk, so not much doing about that. But that to me begs the question, and that's the ultimate question I'm walking away from this episode from, like, why did he do it? David was helping you, like, find your body, not unless David, like, it didn't seem like David necessarily backed away from that. But I guess maybe after the whole monk situation, he felt like David had backed away from it or changed his mind potentially. It's like, why would you, I mean, I guess the point is he knows where his body is now, so he doesn't need David's help anymore. So it's just kind of like just kind of to teach you a lesson, like, or, you know, kind of just having twisted fun with David. He did that. Which also begs the question, then where's Amy's consciousness? Because that's Lenny in there. But it did seem like for Lenny, a lot of stuff was kind of jumbled, because she was wondering, like, what was kind of her memories and what was just stuff like the Shadow King kind of mess with. So is Amy's like consciousness still in there? Did he take her consciousness? Or was it basically when he put Lenny in there, he overwrote her? Because they played it in the beginning, but it's like, he's like, oh, what are you going to do with your life afterwards? Like, once I give it back to you. So it's like I said, but what was the point in all of this? Like, why did he do that? Because I guess it's super sad too, because David hasn't visited her in that entire time. I mean, because they've been caught up with he came back, he was kind of brushing all of this situation. So probably when it was all said and done, didn't he probably go check on Amy? But it's like, because Amy was like, oh, like when Oliver came, it's like, oh, I could take you to David. So I mean, she hadn't talked to David since he got back, you know, at the beginning of the season. So, because now all that's going to do is push David to go after Farouk. But maybe it's because in his mind he thinks it doesn't matter what David does, because David won't be able to stop him once he gets his body back. Which is interesting, because that just means we are heading towards a timeline that future Sid was warning about. Because she talks about the fact is, and like relative to that point when she warned David, it's like, yeah, soon enough, in a little bit, you're going to end up killing Farouk. You're going to bash his head in. So we see main motivation behind that. So will there be a way of like reversing it with that machine? I mean, would they need Amy's DNA to make it possible? But even if they did do that, like, because Farouk's got this whole mentality of like, once, like, the more spectacular a sunrise is, the more amazing the god is. And this was supposed to be his sunrise. I thought, like, the entire time I was thinking, like, oh, he's like, oh, once I get my body back, then I'll have this spectacular sunrise, and then everyone's going to see, you know? I thought that's what that was all about. Because it's also interesting about this is, Farouk had a conversation with Oliver. How do you feel about morality? And it's just like, obviously, like, Oliver kind of went on this tangent basically about being like, ultimately it's like, he kind of feels like it's irrelevant, like, you know, life and death almost, because for him it's like, oh, the stars that kind of burnt out and could have killed a lot of people or done a lot of damage, but it's like, it's the atoms from that star are here holding this car together, basically saying that nothing truly dies then, if it always kind of lives on in a different point. So it's kind of like, what's life and what's death is kind of like irrelevant, because like when something seems like it's dying, it just lives on in a different shape or form. So it's all just kind of like this cycle of passing on this life as one thing and living on as something else. But the main thing that Farouk was trying to get across is, because they're superior, the whole being homo superior, just the typical mutant situation in some cases where it's like, we're superior to humans in any shape or form. It's like a lion hunting down like a prey, an animal to eat. It's like lions don't think about morality. They just do it. It's just kind of like, that's kind of, they are the superior species on the food chain, and that's kind of what he's saying we as mutants are to humans. So killing some here and there shouldn't matter because we're higher up on the food chain than them. But you also have like this thing where Oliver's kind of like, I'm going to kill you, right? And he's like, oh, I've got this whole plan. He's like, 1 + 1. And he's like, oh, equals 2. It's like, no, it doesn't. And he's like, oh, you're clever, which I didn't catch it. I don't know what that's supposed to be sly being like, oh, 1 + 1 is in like 11. It's like, what is that supposed to mean? Don't know. Maybe that's the point to kind of keep us in dark about what Oliver has planned exactly. But like I said, it's just kind of sad that everything kind of turned into what it did. Like, I don't understand why Farouk did what he did. Like I said, because it doesn't seem like it is a situation of he kept her consciousness. It just seems like she was completely overwritten. Or maybe that really is Amy, and then Lenny's kind of plastered on. Like, I mean, like her consciousness is still there, but Lenny's is kind of muddled all in there. So it's kind of hard to distinguish the two. That basically they're kind of operating in the same wavelength. Maybe that's what kind of messed with Potomi's power the most. Why everything was a little shaky. Not only what was going on with him, but maybe what was going on inside of Lenny's head potentially. So. I mean, it is interesting because she did go there, but for her, it's like she feels like she doesn't have any intelligence to really give them because she really doesn't know anything. She just woke up. And you do see her at the very end trying to console David because she doesn't understand what's going on, but she's there trying to hold him and trying to console him through it all. But like I said, David is dead set on going after Farouk after this, so. Like I said, it seems like it's a situation where maybe there is no changing time. Because like she was like, oh, for what's coming next, you're going to need Farouk to be alive. But David, I mean, this also might feed into what she was talking about too, about David not being the same. This is going to be David, like, this is David post losing Amy, the only family he has left. Because I forgot when they ever talked about his mom passing away, but I know his dad passed away while he was in Clockwork. So he couldn't actually go to the funeral or anything. So I don't know if you consider the situation worse than her being dead. I mean, it's the same equivalency, but I feel like it's almost worse. I didn't talk about it either, but that room that Lenny was in was interesting too, because it's kind of like an upside down room. Because even she's like, are you like, what's going on here? Because the skyline from the room, it seems like a reflection, and there's a city, like an upside down city kind of. It's almost like it's coming from, like they're viewing it from the sky because it's an upside down city, but they're kind of right side up, but even the writing on the wall is upside down. It's like, what is the purpose of that room? To just disorientate someone, kind of like make them lose track of what's up and down so that they can't really focus on lying or something like that, just to disorientate them. I don't know. I'm curious to see what they ultimately decide to do with Lenny going forward from here, because she is just kind of like a regular person. You kind of do feel bad because Lenny even says herself, it's like, I'm just literally a regular person, like thrown into this weird, crazy situation. First half my body's in a wall, like one side of a wall, and my other half of my body's on another side of a wall. And now I was trapped in the mind of like a psychopath, kind of kept as like his plaything and his hostage. She's like, once again, she's like, I'm the victim here, so. Will they just let her go? Will she stay in Division 3? Like, what's going to happen to Lenny? Will we see more interactions between her and David? Like I said, they kind of have a friendship, a bond, but I don't know if that's going to be, or they're just going to stash her away here, keep her. I mean, something Clark was kind of like, oh yeah, we have places where in this building where it's just, we lock people away and we just kind of forget about them. So that might be potentially a future waiting for Lenny, but we don't know. What I also thought was kind of interesting too is before she ended up in the way she did, Amy had a dream about being one of those, what are Vermilions? The, mustache ladies, and it's like, oh, talking with the voice and everything. It's like, why would you have a dream about that? What is that supposed to represent? I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Did someone kind of inception that in her head or something? Is that like somehow the future? Like, I didn't get what that was like all supposed to be about. Is that supposed to mean like, I don't know. I don't know how to interpret that. Like, that didn't make any sense to me, like what that meant. I don't know, like there's a lot of things, like I feel like going back and rewatching a lot of this will make sense to me, but going the first time through, it's like, I don't know if because I feel like I'm missing a lot. Because there's the whole thing in the episode too, which I thought was kind of neat too, the whole like humans always seeking patterns and things, kind of seeking out danger, but humans have a tendency when they're seeking out those patterns to kind of cross out anything that might kind of contradict their beliefs, that pattern, it's like. So whereas a pessimist might look at a person with their hand behind their back as, oh, danger, whereas an optimist will look at it as like, oh, this is, they look at it in a different point of view. And this is where coincidence turns into conspiracy. It's an interesting thing. Not 100% sure how that tied into the episode exactly. maybe the whole thing with Amy, it's supposed to be that, like, Lenny showing up now in a new body and stuff like that isn't coincidence, that it was all like a whole purposely orchestrated thing. Maybe that's what it is, that it was, in fact, this being a conspiracy just to, really mess with David. Like, they knew it'd be a while before it get to David about everything happening and him figuring out what this is all about, because Lenny has no memory of it and doesn't understand what's going on, so I don't know. I'm just rambling, I know, but it's just kind of something that's just there. Like I said, I just get the feeling like going through it a second time, maybe a lot of this stuff will kind of make more sense. So like I said, I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode with all of this. Maybe this was all some tactic to slow it down. It's like, oh, Lenny, so that they would think like, oh, it's Lenny. Is she really the Shadow King? What she's here for? That they wasted so much time looking into that they're not tracking Oliver and Farouk down, because this gave them a head start too. So I guess maybe that's the main reason behind all of this. So I don't know. Like I said, we'll ultimately see what goes down in the next episode concerning all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.